So settle in. We've got I've got a lot of information for you tonight. This is not necessarily brand new if you've watched every single thing I've ever done, but I will be reviewing some information, and I'm going to be talking specifically about where we are and what's up on the planet. And I'm going to look at it strictly through the lens of money and other stories we tell about ourselves, about abundance, and about quantum consciousness. Part of why I'm revisiting this information, and I try to revisit it on a regular basis, is because, having information, knowing what's up and understanding what's up really allows us to stay in our lane, if you will. It allows us to keep moving forward and to be able to pivot and transform whenever is necessary. So here's how I might think of it. If you think about stimulus, anything that happens in your life, an event, an experience, that's a stimulus, right? If you think about a stimulus and you think about responding to the stimulus, and I'm talking about responding in the regular way, not the human design way, there's a gap, right? There's a gap in between stimulus and response. Hopefully there's a gap. Sometimes there isn't. I mean, it's okay if you got to do something quick to save your life, but generally speaking, there's a gap. And when we don't understand what's in that gap, and what lives in that gap is the story you tell about who you are. When we don't understand what's in our gap, we can't gain control over how we react to it. We lose our sovereignty. We lose our agency. We lose our control and our power. And we default to reacting, and we react out of old patterns. We react out of old stories, from old stories. So going back every year and looking at what's going on in the chart, how is the chart changing? Because the human design chart itself is changing. We're in a shift, right? We're literally in the shift. We're moving into a brand new consciousness, an expanded consciousness. And you have to know what's happening in order to stay in that gap and to be able to pivot, to be able to consciously and deliberately choose what's next. And really right now, as I kind of set us up for where we're going, part of why that's so important right now is that if we don't keep the progress moving on our end, those of us who have a better sense of what's up, who have a deeper understanding of what's going on the planet, if we fall prey to the reactivity, that's a natural byproduct of the tension and the disruption we're experiencing, then we re-anchor that old energy on the planet. When we keep over here and we are consciously and deliberately managing our response to life, we're letting life's intelligence roll through us, we're hearing it, we're deliberately creating in response to life's intelligence, we're building what we know is next, we're maintaining and sustaining the bubble, if you will, of consciousness. The more we do that, the more we lift our frequency. And the more we raise our frequency, the more contagious that is. And the more contagious it is, the more we are able to bring other people with us. Does that mean we don't have to do the work? Does that mean we're not going to do the third dimensional stuff? Yeah, of course we will. Absolutely. We can't not do the work of the world. But to do the work of the world most effectively, we do it from a place of deliberateness and consciousness. We can pivot and do the work necessary, the right work, the aligned work. We'll know what the next right step is when we've taken back control over our own story and how we choose to respond to life. So that's sort of how I'm setting us up for tonight. And I really want to invite you into continuing to remember that the more you take control of your story, the more you know who you are, and the more you know what's up, the better able you are to serve on the leading edge of consciousness and keep continuing to bring the changes that we know are coming in a good way. Bring those changes in. I don't know how we're going to get to the world that I know we're getting to. If we look at the astrological transits and we look at human design, what we know is that we're on the cusp of a massive creative revolution. And at the end of this revolution, the world in which we live will be quite different. And it is going to be a world of equitable, just, sustainable, abundant peace. It's written all over the stars, if you will. And we do have choice. And part of what we have to choose right now is, how are we going to get there? Okay, how are we going to get there? And again, the more we know what's up and the more we understand our own story and our own narrative, the better able we are to evolve deliberately and consciously. So, all right, can you guys just confirm for me that the slides are actually moving and it says human design, mechanics of money, and evolution? Yes?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So I like to talk about money. And if you've been reading any of my newsletters lately, you know I've been talking a lot about money. And part of why I like to talk about money is because money is a very interesting symptom of our conversation, internal and external, around value. And part of what's changing is the definition of value and what is valuable. And certainly within the context of that, we're also changing our own definition of our own value. So tonight I want to really unpack what's up with money, what's up with value, what's up with self-worth, what's up with consciousness, and how do all of these pieces play together. Some of you, not all of you, some of you may have heard parts of this presentation before, not a whole lot of them, but there's some things that I say a lot over and over again because they're that important. I do want to invite you that if you've heard pieces of this before, listen to it with fresh ears, listen to it with an open heart, and listen to it with an open mind. I want to really invite us into a space where we stay curious. Every time I teach this information, I hear something new, and I want to leave you open to the possibility that you might hear it in a different way and in a new way, with a new possibility presented to you, hopefully. So let's talk. Let's talk about first what I'll call the basic mechanics of manifesting. I was thinking about the word manifesting this week. You know, that was a word when I first started teaching in 2003, 2004, 2005. Like, nobody knew what that meant. I'm glad we know what this means now. So in the next few slides, I'm going to break down for you the basic building blocks, the components of the mechanics of how we manifest. So I want you to listen to this and think about all these different parts. And I want you to think about how these parts might be impacting what you're creating in your life right now. So the very first component in the mechanics of manifesting is called the quantum field. The quantum field is literally a field of potential. Right now, at this very moment, you're swimming, literally swimming, sitting in a field of unlimited possibilities. There are innumerable options for what you could have, be experiencing, notice, see, be a part of in your life right now. There are way more possibilities than you ever could make manifest in this one lifetime that you're experiencing or conscious of at this point. So we're always sitting in a sea of infinite possibilities. That's an important thing to pay attention to when we feel stuck or trapped or blocked, or we think there are no options. There's always options. There are always options. You're always sitting in a field of unlimited possibilities. The trick is knowing how to draw those experiences into your tangible reality, manifesting. The second component in the creative process, or the creative equation, are the mental and the emotional bodies. This is sort of like an energy field or a filter, if you will, that contains the history of who you are. This is the place where you store all the memories, the emotional memories and the physical memories and the mental memories of all the things that have happened to you, all the experiences you've had, all the things that people have said to you, all the things your teacher said to you, your mom said to you. It's also the place where we, as I said, we store the emotional memories, and sometimes those aren't always straight up front in our consciousness. It's also the place where we carry our ancestral lineage. So we carry in this filter not only the story of our own personal experiences, we also can carry up to 14 generations of memories that are encoded onto the epigenes. Those are protein codes that regulate your DNA. So you're carrying not only your personal story, but your ancestral story in your conditioning. You're also carrying the conditioning field of the planet at this time. And in particular, you're carrying the conditioning field of the planet at the moment of your conception, because the parts of your personality, parts of your design come from the earth at the moment of your conception. And so at the moment of your conception, you're bringing with you the imprinting of what's going on the planet right now. It's always an interesting thing to think about. If you want to, some of us don't like to think about this, but it's always an interesting to think about what was going on the planet when you were conceived, not when you were born. That's also kind of cool. But what was actually happening on the planet when you were conceived? That already is part of your memory bank, if you will, the filter that influences who you think you are and what you create in your life. The third, and this one's a little bit more subtle, haha, pun intended. The third component in the creative equation is called the subtle body. This is the energy template for what you are creating or what you are discreating or what's being held in place in your life right now. So some of you may refer to this as your aura or your energy field. If you go to an energy healer, this is the layer of your energy. This is the layer of your story that they're working on. If you go to a good intuitive or a good psychic, they oftentimes are going to be scanning your subtle body, and they're going to be able to see like, oh, you just got over a cold, or, oh, it looks like your soulmate's about to come into your life. You have this template, this energy template that kind of holds your physical life in place. It is a powerful place to pay attention to whenever we make transformation and change. And those of you who are familiar with the quantum alignment system, which integrates quantum human design, the emotional freedom techniques, and flower essences, part of why we add the flower essences is we know that anytime we make change, we make cognitive changes or we make physical changes, we have to also hold those changes in place on the auric level, on the subtle body level. Kind of think of it as a Band-Aid or a poultice. It holds it in place to make it easier for you to not go back to your default programming. You know, our natural tendency is to want to go back to our old programming. Using subtle body energy therapies, especially flower essences. And if you're curious about flower essences, you should check out our Jamie's work. Her website is thepotionlady.com. It's Potion Lady or The Potion Lady, Jamie?
Potion Lady.
Potion Lady, just Potion Lady. We'll put the link in chat and go check out some of the work that she does with flower essences. The last, but definitely not the least part of the creative process is your manifest reality, your life right now. Okay, your physical reality is basically a potential that you consciously or unconsciously plucked out of the quantum field, that field of infinite possibilities. You plucked that out of the field and you dropped it into your physical reality. And right now in your third dimensional life, you're experiencing that choice, whatever that choice might have been, conscious or unconscious. A different way of looking at this, just a little bit more simple maybe, is that you've got this quantum field of infinite possibilities. You've got your life right now, and in between this field of unlimited possibilities, there's a filter. And that filter is basically the story of who you are. And of course, your human design is part of that filter because it tells you how you engage with the quantum field and how you engage in your material life. And of course, it also tells us where do we carry our conditioning and what are we more conditioned by, and many other things in addition to that. So your filter is really important because if you're really able to create anything, the only thing that's keeping you from creating anything you want is whatever's in that filter, right? So if we want to create something different, we have to adjust the filter. We have to adjust the story of who we think we are. So you may have heard, I'm sure you have heard, the statement, I create my own reality. Well, if we're going to accept that as a truth, then we have to answer some really important question. Who's the I? And we oftentimes talk about the create part, right? I create my own reality. I create it. But we don't oftentimes ask the question, well, who's the you that's creating it? And most importantly, we really don't ask, who are you really, right? Because a lot of who we think we are, especially for those of you who are new to the human design story and you've just like gotten your chart within the last little bit, you know, part of what happens when we first start learning human design is we first start learning who we're not, which is really what, traditional human design is so good for that. It's such a great tool to help us really learn who we're not And part of why I created quantum human design is because I found that once people went through that part of the journey, they really wanted something bigger, something to call them forward into really being who they are, really. And of course, that's not an endpoint. There's not like, okay, I'm it, I'm being who I am really. It's just a piece, a part of where you are in a spectrum of potential. And you have available to you this unlimited, unending spectrum where you get to amplify and expand upon who you are in greater and bigger and more juicy, more authentic, more aligned ways. So you are the space. You are the space. So you are the space in between your manifestations, and that space is consciousness. So basically, consciousness is a rocket fuel that creates. Okay. And of course, consciousness is pushing through this filter, picking an option and bringing it back into the material world. Now, consciousness, another way of thinking of consciousness is that you could call it quantum mechanics. You could call consciousness the movement of quantum particles. It's not the quantum particles themselves, but it's the movement and what regulates the movement. Now, quantum physicists know that they can measure the movement of a quantum particle. That's a building block of matter, right? The matter is just made out of building blocks, and those quantum particles are the parts of the building blocks of matter. So quantum physicists know that they can measure the movement of quantum particles or the location of quantum particles, but never both at the same time. Part of what happens is as soon as you look at a quantum particle and you try to figure out where is it, you're looking at it with an expectation, right? You can't find it and locate it if you without an expectation for where you think it's going to be, and of course for how you think it's going to behave, because you have to know how it's moving in order to have an expectation in order to find it, right? So you can only measure movement or location of a quantum particle, but as I said, never both at the same time. Movement, when a quantum particle is in movement, it's existing in a state of pure potential. So it doesn't actually exist in the material plane. It just exists on the potential plane. So it's in the quantum field, right? You're swimming right now in a bunch of zipping, zapping, moving sea of quantum particles. Location, of course, as I said, is manifestation. The minute you try to find a quantum particle, you have an expectation about how it's going to behave, and you have a thought about where you might find it. When you go look for it, then it stops moving. It's not in potential form anymore. It actually drops into manifestation. The meaning or the expectations that we have, so the meaning you have, the story of who you are, or the expectations you have about who you think you are, determines what you manifest. Okay, so your expectations, the meanings you have, the stories you tell, determine which quantum particles, which potentials you drop into your reality. So the meanings we have are determined by our conditioning field. That's our mental and emotional body. They're influenced by your human design, including your life and your soul purpose. And if you want to create what you really want, anything you want, you have to have a meaning that is in alignment with what you desire. Okay? So I'm going to give you a second here. I want you to look at this image. And I want you to I'm going to give you just 30 seconds. Just in the chat, I want you to write down everything that comes to mind when you see this image. I want you to know every emotion, every thought, every idea, every story, anything that comes to mind when you see this image. This is money, by the way. So 30 seconds. All right. I want to encourage you all to take a look at what's happening over here in the chat. We've got I want it, paper, founding fathers, patriarchy, doesn't grow on trees, freedom, feed the world, abundance, out of reach, greed, power, yummy, exciting, beloved friend, happy, free, rich, robbery, greedy, money, printing press, abundance, mint, wealth, not sure, relief, security, financial order. There's like a bajillion different things going on over here in the chat about money. I like doing this presentation when we talk about money because it's such a great diversity of things come up. All right, so I want you to think for just a minute, and again, I'm going to give you just a minute. Do the same thing in chat. I want you to think about what meanings do you have about money? What meanings do you have for yourself? And when I say what meanings, I want you to write down specifically, what do you believe about money? You don't have to believe a whole bunch of them, but I just want you to, you don't have to write down a whole bunch of them, but just pick one core belief that you have about money that feels kind of right for you. And it's okay if it's not a positive belief. Okay, so one belief, one meaning that you have, you specifically in your life about money. Okay. So again, there's a huge amount of stuff, diversity of stuff happening over here. So I want to tell you for just a minute what happened when I said the word money, or I showed you the slide. As soon as you saw that slide, your brain was triggered. And part of what got triggered was a photon storm. Literally a storm of light got triggered in your brain. That storm of light caused your body to produce neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters in turn caused you to create an emotional experience. And some of you wrote about it. Your guts were twisting. You were feeling exhilarated. You were feeling anxious. Those emotions were created by neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters and that emotional energy, that's a frequency of energy. That frequency of energy actually programs the heart. And it programs the heart to activate an electromagnetic resonance field that matches the emotions that you have. We can program, in human design, we talk about this as the magnetic monopole. There's actually a magnetic resonance field that's generated in the G system, G center. And that G center is calibrated by the quality of your emotional energy. If you created an emotional response that isn't creating the experience of money that you want to be having, the very first thing we have to do is go back to what's in the story. What's in the money story? What needs to change in that story? And how do you need to redefine for yourself the story you tell about money? Now, there's a lot of things. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of resources at the end of this call. And people always want to know, well, how do I change my money story? I want to invite you into something that is just a really, really easy, it's actually a scientifically documented way to start changing your money story. Literally write it out differently. Write a different story. Turn your money story into an art project. Do it as a creative writing process. Write a story about your life when you have a different and much better relationship with money. Or make an art project that represents your changing, evolving, healthier relationship with money. That's not the only thing to do. and I'm not going to focus too much in this presentation on how do we shift our money belief. I do know from personal experience, it can be extraordinarily painful to have challenges with the money story. So I do want to encourage you to, at the very beginning of this journey with money, start by literally rewriting the story, turn it into a creative writing project, and see if you can't pick up in that process, perhaps elements of the story that you can change, that you can shift into, that you can metaphorically begin to embody in a different way. All right, let's go on and let's talk about money and evolution. All right, and what's up with money on the planet right now, and why is money such an interesting and challenging thing for so many of us at this time on the planet? So we are in a very interesting time. We are in a time when there is a big shift in consciousness happening. And for us to understand what's going on with money and consciousness and our ability to manifest, we have to understand the history of the evolution of consciousness. So to understand that, we have to actually go back to the scientific revolution, which actually ended with Sir Isaac Newton and his discoveries of physics. At the end of the scientific revolution, we had figured out lots of new and exciting ways to codify and measure the material world. We emerged from the scientific revolution with a much better understanding of how the material world worked. We weren't nearly as suspicious. We also weren't nearly, because we weren't so suspicious, as vulnerable to the controls of things like the church or the king. What happened at the end of the scientific revolution, which actually ended, really kind of the artifacts and the endings of it really happened later in the 1700s, is that we learned to see the world through a very materialistic lens. The reason why this happened is we actually had a lot of shifts and changes in the human design chart itself. So if you are familiar with the chakra system and you look at human design and you say, how come there's 9 chakras on the chart? It's because in the late 1700s, the chart itself changed and we went from being a 7-centered being to becoming a 9-centered being. And part of what emerged at the end of the Newtonian era was the will center. The will center is a pretty new center. It split, the heart chakra split into the G and the will center. And a lot of what we understand, a lot of the energy of the end of the materialistic era emerged with the birth of the will center. We learned, as part of the artifacts of the energy and the understanding of this time, we learned to focus on finite amounts and solutions. We fell in love with things like fixed laws with probable and possible, predictable results. We savored formulas. We wanted formulas for everything. We came up with reasoning as the number one way of knowing anything. And if you knew stuff and it wasn't reasonable, it didn't count. We fell in love with nature and natural laws, and we were compelled and driven by a need for certainty. The outcropping of this era was a metric of valuing things based on numbers, right? So we began to apply formulas to everything in life, including healthcare. We created a healthcare system. We created the Industrial Revolution, people in, work in, product out. We had the birth of capitalism at this time. We have an education system. We have government systems. Anything that has the word system on it is an outcropping of this materialistic consciousness. We learned to measure value by numbers, and we started to value people by how much money do you have? And later on, in more modern society, if you go to Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, it's, what size pants do you wear? What size bra are you? How many years of college education do you have? How many cars do you own? We use numbers to measure value. And of course, in the economy, the currency of the materialistic era is money, right? It's a way of measuring value. Now, evolution is the imperative of consciousness. And it's probably a little bit more deliberate than what we were taught in school. In fact, I would lovingly and gently say that anybody who understands biology at all in the modern world, especially in the last 20 years, knows pretty clearly that Darwinian evolution doesn't make sense. And we can't find the science to really verify that Darwinian evolution makes sense. But Darwinian evolution gave us that whole stupid line that we're not in love with, but society fell in love with, which was survival of the fittest, right? And of course, instead of applying that just to animals in the wild, we decided to apply that to how we value people. So not only were we measuring people by money and numbers, we started to say, oh, and the person who has the most numbers and the most value is also the fittest, right? That's that competitive edge that comes with finite thinking and finite resources. I'm being a little snarky, so forgive me. Enter the quantum era. So what oftentimes happens is when consciousness shifts, there are two places where we start to see shifts in consciousness. The first place is in our understanding of science. And even before that, I want to say this, I want to just look at you straight on in the face, because some of you are going to be like, whoa. The first place we tend to see it is in art. Art usually embodies the idea that science then comes back around and actually proves to be true. Think about science fiction. Think about Star Trek. Do you know how many things that were in Star Trek are scientists are not like, oh yeah, that's a thing, right? So art, I think about Salvador Dali and all of the surrealist paintings. That was a beautiful embodiment of the idea that thoughts create your reality. So if thoughts create your reality, then whoa, right? We can bend that with art. So pay attention to art and creativity, because art and artists and creatives, they are on the leading edge of evolution. In fact, we see this in human design. We see that the circuitry for transformation and evolution, individual circuitry, is also circuitry that's associated with art and creativity. So there you go. If you're a creative here, you're here to change things. You're bringing in the new ideas already, all right? So science begins to reflect new understandings. And when our understanding of science starts to change, it's usually heralding the beginning of a new era of consciousness. So in the late 1800s, after the scientific revolution, quantum physicists started saying, hey, wait, hold up, time out. The world isn't actually working the way we thought based on the scientific revolution. It's actually different, guys. Look, if I expect to find a quantum particle somewhere and my fellow buddy over here expects to find it somewhere else, we always find it where we expect it, even if we have different expectations. Why? Isn't that interesting? We started to understand that maybe the material world wasn't behaving in the way that we thought, that maybe it wasn't like atoms are the building block of matter and they come together and they make matter and that's that, right? What we started to see because of quantum physics was that, hey, wait, this whole thing, this whole matrix is fluid. And basically the thing that conditions how it behaves is our expectations and the meanings we hold. So this thought flipped the whole world upside down. Now, it's taken a while because it takes time for evolution to happen in the human species. But what we saw was when quantum science started to say, hey, this is a thing, we started to see a movement in art and a movement in spirituality called the New Thought movement, where people started to talk about the idea that, hey, your thoughts create your reality. We saw thought leaders like Ernest Holmes, Edgar Cayce, Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Maria Montessori, and all these really interesting spiritual teachers were basically saying the same thing. Science of mind, right? Thoughts create your reality. Think and grow rich. These are all ideas that sort of emerged around this time frame. We started to understand that, wait, we're all connected to each other. Oneness is not just an idea from a meditating monk somewhere. It's actually a scientific concept. By virtue of the quantum field, we're all connected. And the things that I do here in my life in Wisconsin can impact somebody else all the way in China. That my thoughts can impact people. The way I be impacts people. We started embracing the idea of fundamental creativity, being able to take quantum leaps over our expectations and create unexpected and serendipitous realities. We started to embrace the idea that maybe the metric of value was in numbers, then maybe the new metric of value was, how good is my life? How great do I feel? How much love am I having? How much joy am I experiencing? And we began to embrace change, uncertainty, and potential. So the new currency of this quantum era, and we are knee deep in it. We're really stepping into it and embracing it, beginning to embrace it full on. The currency of this quantum era is not money. It's well-being. How much happiness, how much health, how much connection, how much intimacy, how much support, how much collaboration, how much community, how much food, how much health do you have? And as we continue to evolve, I don't think money's going away, but the way we value money and what we value in our culture is changing. And the human design chart is reflecting that. The chart itself is undergoing a major transformation. And one of the things that's happening is the design of the economy is changing. And part of what's getting added to the design of economy or business is love. Business is becoming rooted in love and caring and nurturing and feeding. And so the ethics and the integrity of business itself and the definition of what business is changing. So we are being compelled as we evolve to begin to value well-being. And here's the cool part about well-being. Well-being comes when we're aligned with our authentic self, when the stories we tell embrace the potential of our design. And the more we live true to that, not only do our lives get better, but literally we all do better when we all do better. We amplify our own well-being. It becomes a frequency of energy that's contagious. And we start to be able to spread well-being everywhere we go, because our frequency of energy lifts others up. That's basic Newtonian physics, right? Frequencies modulate. Higher frequencies and train lower, but lower frequencies cannot pull down higher frequencies. It doesn't work that way. It's physically impossible unless you allow it. So your well-being isn't only good for you and good for everyone, it actually helps you leave your indelible vibration on the planet. So if we go back to, all right, what does that mean? And what if we take money off of the table and we start to say, okay, well-being, it's well-being now, and we revisit the chart? We have to see that the chart, you will see that the chart indicates, clearly shows that in the chart, if we look at the chart as a blueprint or a template for the human experience, we are literally designed to be abundant. Or if you want to rephrase it, because abundance is also kind of one of those chargy words, we are literally designed to be in a state or to have or tap into a state of well-being. So let's talk about where some of these places for these aspects of our design for well-being live. Now, I want to just start before I go looking at parts of the chart. I want to just bring this to your awareness. I'm talking about the chart as a blueprint for the human story. So please don't go run to your chart and look at it and go, well, I don't have that. I'm designed to be broke and unhappy. We all have all of the chart. Some parts of your chart will be colored in, and the parts of your chart that are colored in, those are energies you have consistent access to. Anything in your chart that's white, it means you have the ability to experience that particular archetype in an unlimited way. Anything that's colored in as part of your soul curriculum, anything that's white and that's open, that's what you're here to learn about from others in your relationships. But we all have all of it, just like we all have all of the human genome in our DNA, okay? So we all have all of the charts. So we all have the gate 55. Some of you have it colored in, some of you have it white, but we all have it. So the first thing that we have to see is that we are designed to create and transform and evolve towards things that are bigger than what we know how to build by ourselves by virtue of the quantity of faith that we have. When we look at the human design chart, this gate 55 so I have to back up and just say the chart is changing. I didn't start that at the beginning, but let me go back and remind you. At the end of the scientific revolution, when we went from 7 centers to 9 centers, the chart itself changed. We're actually on the edge of the chart changing again. The chart is actually scheduled to change in 2027. Okay, in 2027, in February of 2027, the chart itself is changing and the configuration of the chart is changing. And part of what's happening in this chart change is that this gate 55 becomes the driver energy for the quantum human, the new design. Now, we are all already in this shift. So please don't feel like, wow, I'm going to be some old, outdated human on this planet and all these new humans are going to be walking around. We're all in the shift. We're all part of the shift. We're all experiencing the shift. So you're going to be experiencing this. You already are. Vision boards, envisioning, having a conscious intention that you're manifesting, affirmations, daydreaming, all of the manifesting techniques that we've been taught since the movie The Secret, or for those of you who are older like me, all of those manifesting techniques you learned when you were getting the cassettes from Abraham Hicks in the late 1990s. All of those techniques of manifesting, that's all about the gate 55. The gate 55 says, have faith. You've got to hold your emotional energy into a state of positive expectancy and maintain that quality of positive expectancy. And whatever you are intending will show up. You don't have to figure out how, but your emotional frequency, your faith will call it in. The second thing we see in the chart is that the channel 14-2, which is oftentimes associated with money in the chart, but it's really not just about money. This channel says, you are designed, we are all designed to respond to opportunities to create abundance, and most importantly, especially through the gate 2, and to receive all the sufficiency we need, all the support that we need to fulfill the story of who we are. In other words, think about this channel for just a minute. This channel is the sacral. This center is the sacral, or I like to call it the evolution center in quantum human design. It is designed to respond to the outer reality. Okay? It's designed to respond. Meaning, when you are aligned with life's intelligence, you are designed to respond to opportunities that will put you in the right place at the right time to receive the support that you need to fulfill the true story of who you are. The third thing that we see is that through this 45-21 is that we are designed to value ourselves, to fully embody our self-worth, to be enough. And that when we be enough, then we have the ability through the energy field of being enough. In other words, we value ourselves, we know our value, we know our right place, we're doing our right work. That when we be enough, we have enough. In fact, we have enough to share. And that our natural tendency, in fact, our natural design says we need to be enough, because when we are enough, we have the ability to transform the world by the extra that we create by virtue of our enoughness. Okay, so we're designed to respond and we're designed to create by virtue of knowing our value. The more we know our value, the more we heal our value, the more we heal our self-worth, the more we take care of our value, the more we put boundaries around our value, the more we rest and restore ourselves because we know we're so precious that we deserve to take care of ourselves so we can continue to be enough. The more we be enough, the more we can create enough, and the more we can be able to facilitate enough for others. So let's talk for a minute about faith and what is faith. As I said, the faith comes in the gate 55 in human design. And this gate becomes a major, major driving force in the new human design chart, the quantum human chart. Part of what's happening right now, as again, the mechanics of this shift that we're in, this evolution of consciousness that we're experiencing, is that we are moving away from the spleen being our major awareness center to the emotional solar plexus becoming our major awareness center. So let's unpack this for a minute. The spleen center on the left And again, we all have one. You either have it defined or open, but it has the same function. It just is going to be more consistent or more expansive. The spleen is where we have our instinct. We're kind of in this very interesting place as human beings. Part of our energy, part of who we are is still rooted in this instinctual energy. And the signal that our instinct gives us is fear, right? It's normal and it's natural and it's actually healthy to have certain kinds of fear, right? It's normal to be afraid to go into a dark cave if you smell an animal, right? It's normal to be at least cautious when you're out walking at night in the dark. It's normal to be afraid of a snake or a spider, right? That's your instinct. But because we are so complex and we have very complex consciousness and very complex brains, we get very confused as human beings and we start to be afraid, deathly afraid of doing things like speaking on stage, which is usually not deadly. Or we get deathly afraid of doing a human design reading when we've been studying for 5 years because we think we're not ready yet and we're terrified, right? We get deathly afraid of getting it wrong and failing. That fear, those existential fears, are actually the signal that you're needing to shift consciously out of using fear as a driver and move over more to your emotional solar plexus and using emotions as your creative energy. When we can consciously maintain an emotional frequency of energy that is faith-filled and consequently abundant, because the artifact of abundance is faith, and faith, of course, creates abundance because faith says, I'm going to be fine. There's going to be enough. Everything's going to be okay. It's going to be better than okay, right? That's an abundant energy. When we live and consciously cultivate that frequency of energy on the daily, we actually are better able to create by virtue of our emotional frequencies rather than being victims of our fear. So we're learning to become less reactive, fear-based, and more deliberate, more emotionally aligned. So let's talk about emotional energy for a moment. So emotional energy operates in waves. It's a vibrational frequency. And if you remember back in high school when we did physics, we may have, you probably looked at sine waves. A frequency wave, or it operates in what's called a sine wave. It's an undulating up and down wave. You want to have a frequency wave, right? Otherwise you're flatlining and you're not here anymore. At least physically, you're not here anymore. Now, those of you who are emotionally defined, you have a lot more variability in your emotional sine wave. Those of you who are emotionally open, meaning if your emotional solar plexus, that's the center here on the right, if yours is white, it means you're feeling and amplifying all the emotional energy around you. Now, emotional energy is a frequency, right? So we're going to experience it in lots of different ways. And we have the ability to consciously work with that energy as part of our creativity, okay? When we talk about manifesting or creating, there's a law. That is called the law of focused success. The law of focused success basically says where you put your energy and attention is where you get results. That goes back to when the quantum physicists had an expectation about where a quantum particle would be, and they focused on it. They were trying to measure it. So they're like looking intently for it. The more they focused on it, the more the results were reflected back to them based on their expectation. The more you put your energy and attention on a thought or an idea or a part of your story, the more that part grows, right? The more energy you put into it, the more whatever you're paying attention to expands. So let's go back and look at this in the context of a sine wave. So a sine wave undulates, it moves, right? It's always moving. You want it to move. When we talk about maintaining a good vibe, or consciously working with a high frequency of energy, we're not talking about the moment to moment or day to day or even weekly or even seasonal vibrations. Let's be real. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad cycles. You're going to have times that feel really heavy And you're going to also have times that feel really joyful. You're going to have a variation in how you experience the world. It's not the day-to-day fluctuation that matters so much as it is the baseline. The baseline is sort of the midpoint between the undulations. It's the baseline frequency that you want to take care of. You want to work to bring yourself back to baseline as best as you can. And let's be really clear. If you're having a crappy day, sometimes you just got to be with a crappy day and it's okay. If somebody you love dies, you're going to be sad, and that's okay. That's normal. So let's not make this be like you have to be happy, happy, bliss, bliss, bliss all the time. And I'm maintaining my vibe, because that's usually not even real. Usually that means you're suppressing a whole bunch of the vibrational qualities, the wave. It's not the day-to-day fluctuation that matters. It's the baseline. It's the baseline. All right. Now, if we look at frequencies and we talk about a high frequency versus a low frequency, what we're saying is this: a low frequency wave over a specified period of time is going to have a low number of undulations or movements. So if you look at the image on the left, that is a low frequency wave. On the right-hand side, you have what's called a high frequency wave. And the reason why it's called a high frequency wave is because it moves a high frequency number of times over the same specified period of time. Why is this important? The reason why this is important is because where you put your energy and attention is where you get growth and results. If you have a low frequency of energy, if your baseline frequency is low and you have a low vibe, what that means is that you're going to be spending more time either feeling great or feeling crappy. And usually what happens is when we start to feel bad, we start focusing on it, right? We think, oh, what's wrong with me? What's happened to me? Am I getting triggered? What's going on in my life? We start asking ourselves what we did wrong or what is wrong with us. And we start to focus on how bad we feel. Think about the conversations we have. Do you actually, I mean, some of you may, and I hope you do, but how many of us actually call each other up and say, God, I had such a great day today. Here's what's amazing in my life. What's amazing in your life today, right? We kind of call each other and complain. We like to kvetch, right? We like to kind of talk about what's not working. And of course, when we're doing that and focusing on all those parts, what happens is we point our energy, our attention, and our focus down to the bottom of the wave. And the more we focus on the bottom of the wave, the bigger it gets, the more it expands, and the more we actually lower our frequency of energy. So if you are emotionally defined, it's natural for you to have cycles where you feel great and cycles where you feel melancholic. It's important for you when you're in that melancholic cycle that you embrace it and you allow it. And you don't focus on it as if there's something wrong with you, but you be with it and you don't resist it and you nurture yourself and you keep holding the mindset of it's going to change. Today, I feel melancholy. Tomorrow or whenever, it's going to shift and I'm going to feel better again. And it's all good. Right? The more you can focus on keeping your attitude pointed upward without judgment and with allowing and not resisting, the more you're going to push that wave up and consequently push that baseline up. And the more you push that baseline up, the more the frequency of the waves increases. And what happens is, even though you're still experiencing the undulations in the high frequency wave, you don't notice the big discrepancy between the highs and the lows as much because that movement is happening so quickly. You're not really noticing the ups and the downs as much as you are noticing the baseline. To create abundance, sufficiency, part of what we have to do is we have to deliberately and consciously maintain the frequency of our emotional wave. That means we have to deliberately maintain and cultivate an energy field, a prayer field, if you will, that's rooted in faith, which means we have to believe, we have to take care of ourselves, we have to play in higher order archetypes, we have to nurture ourselves, we have to learn to love ourselves, we have to do all those things that bring us back to a good, healthy baseline. Part of what we have to do is we have to start paying attention to what thoughts are we telling. If our thoughts calibrate our emotions, which calibrate our heart, which then influences what we attract into our life, then we do have to start exploring what thoughts are we having? What's in our story? What habits do we have that are maybe feeding stories that don't support us, that don't maintain our state of well-being, that don't help us stay aligned with a high frequency of energy? And one of the things I want to leave you with tonight as we contemplate where we're at and what we need to do and where we need to be with what actions we need to take to bring ourselves back into harmony with our baseline is what habits do we need to maintain in order to keep our vibrational frequency high, especially when things are really dicey on the planet right now. And I want to just say there's no right or wrong about this. If you need to not watch the news, don't watch the news. If you need to get off Facebook, TikTok, whatever, the Zoom call, do that. If you need to go outside, do that. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but you have to do what you need to do to keep yourself pointing up, to keep yourself grounded and stable with a baseline frequency that really supports you staying in a state of positive expectancy. Oftentimes that means you have to consciously hear and listen to when you hear old materialistic thinking. Usually it involves some kind of doomsday model. And then say, that's an interesting perception of reality. In the reality that I live in a quantum world where potentials are unlimited. And at any given point in time, there are an innumerable number of options available to me. And I'm not choosing the death scene. I'm not going the dark route because I know we're on our way to creating a better world. So I'm just going to keep building my world over here. Let's talk about what that means in the context of money and value. Part of what's happening on this planet right now is we are rewriting the karma of our will center, of the will center. We're redefining the will and what is valuable according to the will center. So in the past, it's been numbers and money. It's been material goods. It's been he who has the most toys at the end wins. What we know now is we are in the process of clearing the trauma and the karma of low self-worth. We are in the process of rewriting our value story. But right now, we are collectively healing the wounds of the will. We're regaining our sovereignty and we're redefining what is truly valuable. Okay, so we are moving towards a higher expression of the ego or the will center, which means we are learning to use the power of our personal identity in service to integrity, in spiritual service, in service through sharing, and in service through community. Notice that the word to serve is here. This is not martyrdom, but this is a redefinition of an economy that's rooted in serving, in giving from our highest place to our highest good for the highest good of those we come into contact with. And any of you who are in business, you're already probably doing this. This is where heart-based entrepreneurship lives. This is where conscious entrepreneurship lives. And as we continue to rewrite the story of the economy and who we are and the role we play as business people, as healers, as coaches, as thought leaders, we are moving an economy into a place where it serves the needs of the people. It serves by providing and creating greater states of well-being. We are changing the definition of value. And if the new metric of well-being is not going to be numbers and money, it means we're redefining that not only what is the economy, we're defining what is success. And for many of us, that means creating food and resources for people that are sustainable and healthy, that are clean and grown in healthy and dynamic ways. We see this in the way in which the human design chart is changing. The chart itself, the nature of how we eat and what we eat is changing. And as we continue to move forward, our design is beginning to allow for more flexibility around food, and our need for old agrarian systems is falling away. We're moving into an energy field where we are better able to eat and process foods that come from the earth that are not animal-based. We are learning and we are growing towards becoming a species that is deeply concerned and works hard towards not only feeding ourselves, but making sure that the entire world is well fed. that if the new economy, the metric of the new economy is well-being, then part of what we create with business and the work that we do is food and resources, not only for ourselves, but for others. We are shifting the way we value ourselves so that we can better value each other. Because when we see our own value and we heal our own value, then we understand that not only do we occupy a unique, vital, and irreplaceable role in the cosmic plan, but so does everyone else. And that cosmic plan is what it is because we're all a part of it, and that we have an obligation, and it's in our highest good, to not only take care of ourselves, but to also take care of each other, because we all are who we are because of each one of us. Now, one last thing I just want to point out when we talk about where we are right now. Uranus went into Taurus March in 2019 to April of 2026. We're still in the middle of this Taurian-Uranian cycle. It is a cycle that we saw about 100 years ago-ish, a little less than 100 years ago. We are in the middle of a cosmic restructuring of our relationship with money and value. The last time Uranus was in Taurus, we had the Great Depression, we had World War II, we had the Holocaust, we had here in the United States, the Dust Bowl, great shifts and changes in weather and weather patterns and misuse of the land and resources. We are astrologically mirroring that cycle right now. We are in the same energy field. Now, I want to remind you that after we went through this cycle, we had a massive restructuring of many, many systems, including financial systems and social systems. So we're in the process of having our ancestral memories from this time re-triggered as an invitation for us to clear our genetic lineage. That's really what's up for many of us on the planet at this point of time. So a lot of what we're doing is we're rethinking our definitions about money. We're rethinking our definitions about duality. We're rethinking our definitions of lack. And some of us are even actually experiencing it, not because you're screwed up, not because you've done something wrong, but because it's part of your life story to re-trigger this so we can heal it. So that we can heal it not only for ourselves, but ultimately so that we can also heal it for each other. So we are exploring with money, lack consciousness versus abundance, have versus have not, them versus us, male versus female, conservative versus liberal, fill in your duality here. We're getting rid of this old dualistic thinking, and we're starting to think about value on a spectrum of potential. And we're healing our relationship, not only with money, but with our own self-worth, with our faith, with our ability to tap into unlimited resources, with our ability to create, with our ability to redefine the metrics of success in our lives. And as we heal these right now, this is what's up right now. As we heal this, as we heal our own value, we heal our own definition of what is valuable. Not only do we heal ourselves, we heal the world. So I just want to lead you at the end of this webinar just to a couple of resources for you. I know that I've given you a really broad general overview of where we are right now and specifically looked at it through the lens of money. If you want to go deeper into the chart, what's actually changing in the chart, the mechanics of the chart, and some of the other more nuanced aspects of what's going on in the evolution of the chart and where we are in the mechanics and shifting of consciousness, my book, The Quantum Human, is available on Amazon. It's also just as of last week, I think, available as an audiobook. So if you don't like to read, or you think it's too much to read, or you want to listen, you can now go to Amazon and get The Quantum Human as an audiobook. I do have a special request too. If you have purchased this book and you did not leave a review, I would be really grateful if you would also please go leave a review for this book. I want to thank you guys for joining me. All right, take good care of yourselves, nurture yourselves, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye.